Grace and peace, April Chapman here with the Standard of Truth podcast, where we discuss all things social, theological, political, cultural, and educational from a biblical perspective. Today, I wanted to come and do a video reaction. Several people have covered this, but of course, anytime something happens in the culture, I like to examine it and then provide my commentary from the Christian biblical world view. So today we're actually going to discuss an exchange between Eboni K. Williams and Dr. Iyanla Vanzant. And so I needed to familiarize myself with Mrs. Williams because I am in tune to the culture, but I don't consume the culture. I don't watch reality television. I have no idea who a lot of these cultural figures are. So I do have to do a little bit of research to familiarize myself with these new up-and-coming personalities. I know who Dr. Iyanla Vanzant is, but I was not familiar with Eboni Williams. So Eboni Williams, she is a 40-year-old attorney. Well, she's an American lawyer and television host. She co-hosts the late night talk show State of the Union on Revolt TV. She's also been a host on Fox News. And in 2020, she was cast in The Real Housewives of New York City in its 13th season. And so, as you know, Iyanla Vanzant is a New Thought Yoruba priestess. Basically, she's a pagan. And so, but she's an older woman. And despite the challenges that I see, or the warped worldview that I see that most modern women today have, although I don't agree with Dr. Vanzant on many things, there are certain things that she will say, and I will agree and say, you know what, she's absolutely correct. Just in terms of being older, coming from a different generation, and understanding that today's modern women have a completely warped and distorted worldview. Now, I would still agree that her worldview is warped and distorted as well, because she does not know Christ. But when it just comes to certain things pertaining to the generalities of life, I would say she has said some things that I can agree with. So on today's show, I'm going to actually review an interview where Eboni Williams was interviewing Dr. Iyanla Vanzant. And in this interview, Eboni is trying to glean insight and wisdom in regards to, you know, why there's this chasm between men and women today, and why is it that modern women are so masculine? And so how do we rest in our femininity, and what is it to be resting in masculine energy, and what is it to be operating in feminine energy? And Dr. Vanzant takes the opportunity to try to unpack this for her. Obviously, they're using the world's wisdom. And so because I believe all the treasures of wisdom and knowledge are hidden in Christ, I think it's interesting when I hear them in their futility of mind try to make sense of something that is so simple. But let me go ahead and share the video, and then I'm going to come back and provide some commentary on it.
Let me ask you this. Let's get to the logistics, though. Let's get to the logistics. We know that Black women are earning college degrees faster than anybody else. Many of us are doing like we're doing, Iyanla. We're getting those terminal degrees, those JDs, MD, PhDs. We also are the fastest growing group of entrepreneurs, along with Latina women in America. Pew Research said that women are now out-earning men. Yes. In 22 of the largest cities in America, including where I live, New York, DC, LA, you name it. When we talk, and I know that you've said that you cannot teach a man or tell a man how to be a man. So I will not ask you to indict men in this question. But I do want you to speak, Iyanla, to how women need to position ourselves so that we can be in our divinity, so we can have our crowns right, how we can create and not build, when some of us, quite frankly, feel that the men that are available to us, and I'm talking about across the color spectrum, across the age spectrum, trust me, I've done them all, they are not positioned to protect nor provide because of some of the statistics we just talked about. They're not earning the incomes. They're not having the resources, and some of them are not even showing up in the leadership.
Would you date a bus driver? You. Would you date
if he owns the bus? If he owns it. If he owns the bus.
See, that's a problem. That's a problem. That's a problem.
Okay.
Because the standards and requisites, and I'm not talking about him laying on his sofa playing video games all day. I'm not talking about that. But the standards and the criteria that we use to measure men is off for who we are as women and who they are in this society. I would date a bus driver if he loved driving the bus, if he was a man of integrity, if he was good to his mama, if he treated me well. I would date a bus driver. But we think that it's another human being's responsibility to give us what we need instead of us building together. I can build with a bus driver. I'd have my little stash over on the side in my prenup, but I could build with a bus driver. So I think some of the criteria that we look for in the reality of today keeps us unhappy, keeps us angry, keeps us imbalanced. And then when the men show up, we want to beat them up because they're not living up to our standards and criteria. And it's not working, beloved. It's just not working. So it's not that it's bad or wrong. It's obsolete. It's obsolete. We have to come up with a new way of being. I don't believe in carrying a man. A man has to do for himself. My son got his first job when he was 9. 9.
Okay, so there you had an opportunity to hear Eboni Williams ask her question. And I thought it was interesting. I always find that these, highly educated, Black women, they'll use a lot of words. They'll use a lot of words and overcomplicate a question to do a number of things. And I don't want to impugn what I'm about to say. I want to remove it from Eboni. I want to remove it from her because I don't know her personally. But she represents an archetype of today's modern, college-educated, professional Black woman, right? Instead of her just simplifying the question, right? I noticed that, she gave statistics to explain how in 22 of the major cities, women, Black women in particular, are out earning Black men. Essentially, what I'm interpreting what she's asking is, how do we position ourselves to get a man when women are out earning men of all stripes? Like, what are we supposed to do if we're out here doing a darn thing and these men are just not on our level? And I noticed that Iyanla cut through all of the fluff, cut through all of the statistics, just cut through all of that and asked a very basic, simple question. Would you date a bus driver? And then she was just quiet. Notice how first Eboni didn't initially even react or respond. And Iyanla had to say, I'm talking to you. Would you date a bus driver? And in the most smug, arrogant, and haughty way, she claps back and says, if he owned the bus. And I was like, oh, how cute. How cute. How cute. So ladies, this is part of the problem. This is part of the problem I see. And you're not going to like this, but it is what it is. Let us be clear. Earning a JD, a PhD, an MBA, none of these, postgraduate degrees add any sort of intrinsic value to you as a person. They don't make you more attractive. They don't make you more appealing. They are accessories that you add to your life in order to add some sort of value to your life, but they don't necessarily add any value as it relates to how you're going to be competitive or attractive to a man, because men don't look at those things. And the sad part about it is women like Eboni, they end up by themselves because they have they have a false sense of who they are in relationship to the rest of the world. They have tied their achievements, their careers, their degrees. They've tied and attributed those things to their identity. And they're so hitched and affixed to their identity that when you strip and take all of that away, they're just an empty shell of a lonely, bitter woman who uses those things to compensate for the other areas where she lacks. It's very, very sad to watch. Women like this are very, very shallow. There's no depth to them. With all of the lofty words and phrases and the poise and the articulate manner in which that they can interact and engage with the world, they're very, very empty. They don't think or relate to people deeply because who they are is literally tied into what they've accomplished. And so, one, it definitely puts up a barrier in terms of being able to attract a man, because if we understood men, we would know that men don't care about those things. Those things do not make you more marketable. They just don't. When I heard her say that, it was very disappointing, but I wasn't surprised because what she spoke was representative of what most professional, successful Black women, they think, is what they think about themselves. Literally, they think that now that I've accomplished this level and I'm on this next level, whether it's on the corporate ladder or on the educational spectrum, that they really believe that they are better than you. They believe that they are better than you and that anything below that is beneath them. And I'm talking about the ones that look good and the ones that don't. They tie their value to their accomplishments. But outside of that, you don't really want to be in their presence or in their company at all because she thinks she's better than you. I'm just going to put it out there. She thinks she's better than you. She is essentially telling you that you are not good enough for me because you don't own the bus. If you're driving the bus, I can't be seen with you. One, you can't afford me. We may or may not have anything in common. And I'm not even willing to open myself up to the possibility of you because what will people think? I'm an attorney. I've been a host on Fox News. And I've been on Real Housewives of New York, and I've never been a wife. Like, I never understood how that works. How are they? Most of the women on the Real Housewives franchises are not married. They're just not. I don't know how that works. But anyway, I like how Dr. Van Zant said, she basically gently told her that, ma'am, your mind is warped. Your mind is warped. And you've got it all backwards. Now, Iyanla Van Zant is an accomplished woman. She too is an attorney. And she was like, I could build with a bus driver. Because see, the thing is, modern women today, the things that matter and the things that are important, they don't want those things because they're shallow and they're silly. They live for the applause of others. They live for the likes and the hearts and the comments. They're not interested in building a legacy, raising children, pouring into others. They want you to pour into them. They want to leech and suck the life out of you, but they're not providing anything of value that's going to make you be a better person because they think that they are better than you. It's actually quite sad to see women who live and function in the world this way. Because at the end of the day, when you take all of that away, it's just an empty shell of a person. When you take out all the hair, when you pluck out the lashes, when you wipe all the makeup off, there's nothing there but an but a shell of emptiness. No man wants to deal with that. That is just a headache waiting to happen. Like women like that need to come with like a bottle of ibuprofen because you're preparing for a headache. A woman like that, you don't want to bring home to your mama. Because she's not humble enough to serve or to give of herself in any way. Because all that she is and all that she hopes to become is tied up and wrapped into things. She's superficial. She lacks depth. She might be able to engage in intelligent dialogue, right? From the perspective of she might, be well versed in, geopolitical matters, or she might be, well versed in some sort of financial markets and things like that. But there will be no deep, intimate level type conversation with a woman like that because she's going to spend the vast majority of her time flexing. She's going to flex because all that she is tied up in things, and there is a dollar value assigned to it. Her statements were quite inflammatory, and they made a lot of people angry because essentially when Ayana asked her, would she date the bus driver? Instead of her just saying, nope, I wouldn't date a bus driver, what she did was said, if he owns the bus, meaning you driving the bus is mediocre. It's average. It's beneath me because I am leveling up. I've leveled up. And so therefore, if you're not even interested in leveling up, there's nothing for us to discuss because there's nothing that you can offer her. See, the things that she covets and wants and desires aren't really tied to anything real. It's tied to things that vanish and fade, like the grass, like the herb in the field. She'll never know the security of being with a man who will love her like Christ loved the church and willing to give up himself for her. She doesn't know what genuine protection looks like, right? The man that checks to make sure that your tires have adequate air pressure in them and that the tread is at the right depth, and that your windshield wipers, stay changed. She's not interested in the man that's going to always make sure that there's gas in her car when she leaves for work, or that the home is secure with adequate security protocols, or if there's a bump in the night, he's going to get up and pursue that in with her safety in mind. She's not interested in the man who's wise and can make good decisions that are not tied to what everybody else thinks, but rather he's principled and he's measured and he wants to do what is right because it is right, not because there's some benefit or what's in it for me. She'll never know or be able to experience any of that. She'll never be able to talk with a man and say, well, babe, what do you think? And he says, I don't think that's a good idea. I do think that, you are setting yourself up for failure if you do this. And she would never be able to heed wise counsel from him because she automatically believes that she is beneath him. And so women who think like this and who have this mindset, they do end up buying a dog and dying alone. They do. And I feel bad for them. I feel bad for them because they've allowed the beauty of their youth to be wasted and squandered on the shallow and the silly. That's just a fact. That's just a fact. She could lose everything today and it won't make her any more or less attractive than she is now, because the shell of the woman that you see is empty and broken, and she needs to have the approval and the applause of those out there, meaning the man with the power and the prestige and the money, to compensate for all that she lacks. So further, I found where she actually responded to the criticism. Surprisingly, people were offended. Obviously, men were offended. And, you know, women like this come a dime a dozen. If I was a man, like, women like this, they have no power, because no one's really checking for them anyway. So, you know, you kind of just let them talk. But it's obvious that she got a lot of pushback and blowback from her statements, because essentially the average Black man in America makes $40,000 or $45,000 a year. He might be a bus driver. She basically offended the vast majority of individuals in the community, which says to me that she doesn't have a healthy perception of reality. She doesn't understand that there's only a very small percentage of men that make the kind of money that she thinks that they should be making. She's not living in reality. And the thing is, if she loses it all today and she's actually given a dose of reality, it's too late. It's too late, because she's already offended so many men that would probably, if she had a better attitude, if she had a better disposition, if she was just a little bit humble and meek, then she could probably attract. But her attitude, her haughty and boastful and arrogant nature is actually what repels men. They're not intimidated by your money. They're definitely not intimidated by that degree. They just don't want to be with a woman that actually thinks more of herself than she really is. It's very unattractive, and it just makes you look ugly. It's a very ugly way to be. But listen to this.
Today's sidebar starts with a note of gratitude. I want to thank the culture for making my interview with Dr. Iyanla Vanzant one of the most popular and actively engaged content offerings the Griot has produced. So before I tell you my thoughts, let's replay the clip that had some of y'all deep into your feelings. I do want you to speak, Iyanla, to how women need to, position ourselves so that we can be in our divinity, so we can have our crowns right, how we can create and not build, when some of us, quite frankly, feel that the men that are available to us, and I'm talking about across the color spectrum, across the age spectrum, trust me, I've done them all, they are not positioned to protect nor provide because of some of the statistics we just talked about. They're not earning the incomes. They're not having the resources, and some of them are not even showing up in the leadership.
Would you date a bus driver? Would you date
if he owns the bus? If he owns it. If he owns the bus.
See, that's a problem. That's a problem.
Now let's address the response to the interview and what some of y'all are calling a backlash. So let me be clear. First, I am a professional disruptor. So backlash is my business. And I will always take it on the chin for the sake of advancing the work, conversation, or movement. So know that I am completely unfazed by the onslaught of nasty comments, wishing me a sad, lonely, bitter existence until my untimely death. Now, that is some weird energy to be wishing onto a Black woman, especially one who has dedicated her life to the liberation of Black folk. But, you know, whatever, I guess, go off. See, I wanted to talk about how do we close the gap between Black women who do show up in a so-called masculine posture, those of us that are providing and building and protecting due to circumstances that we might feel make us feel that if we don't do it for ourselves, we will have to go without the resources and protections we need to feel safe in this world. But Dr. Iyanla went in a different direction. She asked me a personal question. And y'all know I have been extremely transparent about the fact that my life choices and my chosen lifestyle are far outside of the norm. So when I said that I would date the bus owner, a lot of y'all heard something different. Some of you heard the following. Bus drivers are whack. Bus drivers are broke. Oh, and I'm too good for a bus driver. The only thing is, y'all made that part up. See, I said what I said. But then some of y'all started talking about salaries and hourly wages, pensions and benefits. And that's wild because I was never talking about money at all. I was talking about black ownership, but some of y'all made it about money. I'm talking about ownership, black enterprise, and entrepreneurship, because really I am talking about black liberation. And if you read my book, you'll understand why. So I'm standing 10 toes down on that position, and I don't really care if you're hurt or offended by it. And since some of y'all are already big mad, let me go ahead and make you incensed. So out of the 50,000 plus comments posted on social, I only saw a handful that even considered the possibility of a bus owner being a more aspirational position and recognizing that I am actually speaking and pouring into the ascension of black men when I said what I said. But see, no, some of y'all were too busy naming and shaming me personally and black women in general as undesirable, gold diggers, and much worse. Now, I suspect that some of y'all are the same men that were bringing home C's and D's on your report cards, only to then be coddled by parents that said, well, that's okay, as long as you're doing your best. Well, listen, I love and believe in the excellence of black men. So no, my dear, C's and D's or any other form of mediocrity is not okay. No, I will not create a soft place for you or anybody that I love to fall comfortably into the bigotry of low expectations. So I'm going to say one more time, there's absolutely nothing wrong with driving a bus. My mother Gloria drove one for years. But could it be that black America has been sold a narrative of average, regular, and typical being good enough for us? Well, see, that's called white supremacy. And in this case, it takes the form of conditioning black Americans to happily accept being a permanent American underclass. But see, because I know the truth about black folk in America, no, average is not and will never be good enough for me. And the gag is, I don't think it's good enough for you either.
Okay. Well, I guess she told y'all. So I want to engage with a few things that she said. For one, she's definitely doubling down on her statements. In true, I'm not humble, I'm arrogant and boastful fashion. Women like this don't leave room for the possibility that, you know what I said was probably offensive. And so, maybe I should apologize. No, but instead they will gaslight you and shame you for misinterpreting what they blatantly said and try to turn it into something else. So that's what I saw. I saw that she was literally trying to gaslight and say, well, you heard this, but this is what I really meant. But if you actually listen to what she claims, what she really meant, it's actually worse. Let me explain why. First of all, I get it, being smug and snarky, that's the flavor of the day. I got a little smug and snarkiness to myself. I'm working on it. It's a part of the sanctification journey that I've recognized that, in certain circumstances it's appropriate, but not all the time. And so I'm actively working toward that. But she didn't apologize. She didn't try to clean it up because I can't discern her heart. She doesn't think that she did or said anything wrong, right? She's actually upset. No, she's saying, you got all in your feelings. And but what you heard me say is not what you actually heard me say. So she claimed that she was actually advocating for closing the gap between, what men are earning and what women are earning. And then she claimed that it was more about trying to help elevate Black people beyond being mediocre and average. But I guess for me, my question is, why is average such a problem for today's modern woman? In the actual interview, she mentioned that her mother, Gloria, was a bus driver. I don't know if she was at one point in her life or if that was her, career of choice. But many of our mothers were just average, right? And they raised us and they poured into us. Many of us are crafting or building a life that's really more of a delusion. It's more of a fantasy. We're actually actively trying to recreate an alternate reality for ourselves. And it's unfortunate that you lack the self-awareness to see that your attempt to clarify what you said actually made it worse. We heard you affirm the stereotype, right? We heard you affirm the stereotype that Black women are shallow and that they're only interested in what a man can provide for them rather than what he represents in their life. So smug, so arrogant. I don't. Women who lack depth, where they're unable to see the character of a person, that's not the kind of woman that you want anyway. Because when you're sick, right, or when you're going through hard times, she's not going to be there. She's too weak. She's too weak. She's too fragile. Everything about her entire existence is tied to prominence and status. And so she's the type that there is no room in her life for a man because her ego takes up too much of the bed. It takes up the bed, the car, the room, the house. Her ego, she's driven by her ego. And that's the masculine, that's that masculine energy that's actually repelling good men from her. They do like this when they see women like that. You know, the question that many of us need to ask ourselves, and you're not going to like this, but the late, great Kevin Samuels, he's proven so many of you to be exactly what he described as the modern woman's problem. Y'all are just proving him right. Y'all are proving him right. And he's not here to defend himself, but he doesn't really have to. When he says that these women think that they're too good for you, he was right. All that they are and all that they think they are in terms of an identity, it's tied and wrapped into what they've accomplished and how much money they make. And when you're dealing with a woman like that, there's no room in her life for you because all of that ego is taking up the space where you would normally be. So women like this, you kind of just leave them to themselves. They will find temporary fulfillment in more things, in more shallow and silly experiences. But because there's no depth to them, they end up living the latter half of their life with lots of regrets. And it's actually very, very sad to watch. Without being made alive in Christ Jesus and the gospel being able to shine the light into the deep recesses of a person who has a heart like this, there's really not much hope. There's not really much hope because, see, the thing about the gospel is the gospel lays bare. It strips us of all that we believe that we are. It strips us of the false sense of self that we've built up and that we present to the world. And we come to Christ broken, naked, and ashamed with nothing to offer him but our sin. And it's not pretty. It's not pretty at all. As gorgeous as she is, at the end of the day, she is a wicked, fallen daughter of Adam, just like the rest of us. She's sinful and wicked and broken. And she can try to fill her life with more experiences to outdo the experience from before. She can try to fill her life with more girls' trips and more show deals and more TV appearances and a better paying job and more money. And at the end of the day, it will not bring her peace. At the end of the day, it will not bring her joy. And at the end of the day, what does it profit a man to gain the whole world and lose his soul? So I see with Miss Eboni, she has more than one problem. One, she has a darkened heart to where her sin separates her from God. But two, her haughty, arrogant, egotistical, and false sense of self actually repels and separates her from being able to meet a suitable man, because her worldview is twisted. She doesn't have the right view of herself. And so therefore, she's unable to properly vet and attract a suitable mate for her. Because a person with these types of characteristics repel good men. One, they're never good enough for her. And then two, the men that are good for her, that would probably meet her financial and social status requirements, they don't tend to want women like this. It's too much ego. And it doesn't seem like she was really, she's not broken enough. She's not broken to where she has discovered her depravity. So at the end of the day, I would like to see more women affirm who the Bible says that they are and be more humble. Humility goes a long way. Humility and meekness is very attractive to a man. But the more that you believe that who you are is shaped by what you've accomplished and what you have, lonelier you will become. Women like this who double down in their foolishness, and who are driven by their ego rather than a person being of good character, you leave them to themselves. You leave them to themselves and you run, because they'll never appreciate you. They'll never respect you, and they are insufferable to be around. But what do you guys think? Do you think the comments and statements that she made about, she'd only be with a bus driver if he owned the bus, and then tried to cloak it in, I was just, helping Black people to see that we should be striving for more. Because, driving a bus is just, something's just not right with that. You can't build a community with women who think like this. And then we're surprised when Black men date out. Like when they just get Maria the housekeeper, like, why are we shocked? You can't build anything with a woman like this because she thinks she's too good for you. And she'll never respect you because at the end of the day, you are beneath her. You're beneath her. She thinks she's better than you. Just leave them to themselves. Leave them and their dogs and just leave them. Leave them by the side of the road. You can't build with a woman like that. For the Christian community, you want to look for humility, meekness, someone who's going to add value, and value is not tied to finance. You don't want a woman like that raising your children, because then she'll just raise more feministic little monsters, and that's not the legacy that you want. You don't want a woman like that pouring into your seed.